A beautiful prosecutor is mysteriously murdered. Her body is tied up in the shape of a 7 by a twisted killer, but the cause of death is blunt force trauma to the head. Strangely, there are no signs of sexual assault. Since the victim was his assistant, Deputy Prosecutor Rusty takes on the case himself, but with the office caught in a political transition, their rivals see the murder as a weapon to delay the transfer of power. With the election just 2 weeks away, Chief Prosecutor Raymond's future depends entirely on how this case unfolds. Yet things are far from simple. Ever since the murder, Rusty's behavior has become increasingly erratic. At Carolyn's funeral, Rusty, her boss, makes a shocking discovery. She had an ex-husband and even a son over 10 years old. After the funeral, Rusty visits Carolyn's ex-husband, who calmly tells him they divorced 9 years ago. He explains that Carolyn always kept work and life completely separate, so he never really knew her well, and he's already given police his alibi. Late that night, Rusty studies the crime scene photos and realizes the knots are disturbingly familiar, identical to a case he once investigated. Coincidentally, Carolyn was the prosecutor who put that criminal behind bars. The old killer had drugged a woman in her car, then tied her hands with rope in exactly the same way as this new victim. The next day, Rusty storms into the coroner's office, arguing that the autopsy report lacks toxicology and pathology tests, and that the victim's wounds don't look like stabbing injuries. His remarks infuriate the forensic team, who fire back, offended that Rusty is questioning their professionalism. Rusty then redirects the investigation toward the old convict Carolyn prosecuted, believing he might have orchestrated the murder from behind bars. Rusty's assistant disagrees, pointing out that while the knots are the same, the previous victim was stabbed through the heart, whereas Carolyn was struck in the head with a fire poker. This crime seems far less deliberate. When they visit the inmate serving life, he sneers and says, "This is karma." Rusty tries to bargain, offering leniency in exchange for leads, but he underestimates the man's deep-seated rage. "There are 2 things I'll never forget," he says, "your faces and how I was framed." The case stalls. At a routine meeting, Rusty faces relentless pressure from his political rival, Tommy. Turns out, Rusty still hasn't received the full autopsy report. He can only speculate that since the victim didn't fight back, the killer must have been someone she knew. Tommy exploits the chaos for political gain, taunting Rusty until he finally snaps, losing his temper publicly for the first time. Overwhelmed by pressure, Rusty later faces reporters, praising Raymond for his tireless service while accusing their rivals of stirring fear among the public. Raymond watches the broadcast, clearly pleased, while their opponents drop their friendly facade and prepare to strike back. Rusty's odd behavior doesn't escape his wife, Barbara. That night, she calmly tells him to withdraw from the case. But Rusty can't back out now. Handing the case to Tommy would stall the investigation and cost Raymond his seat as chief prosecutor. After Raymond's rival takes office, Rusty's deputy prosecutor position must also be handed over. Shockingly, his wife bluntly reveals the reason behind it. "You had an affair with her, didn't you?" It turns out Rusty's strange behavior stems from an affair he once had with Carolyn. Though it's in the past, the ongoing investigation threatens to expose it. His marriage with Barbara nearly collapsed, saved only by her emotional strength and determination. Overwhelmed by the pressure, Rusty turns to a therapist, finally unloading the pain and guilt he's carried for so long. Yet there's one thing he still can't make sense of. He believed his relationship with Carolyn was pure, but from the very first meeting, something felt different. He senses Carolyn was drawn to his authority, while she herself was energetic and passionate about fitness. Everything his calm, steady wife was not. Rusty never realized how deep he'd fallen until it was too late. To make things worse, Rusty's political rival wins the election, meaning his position as deputy prosecutor is as good as gone. Raymond decides to resign to save face, but this is only the beginning of Rusty's nightmare. At their final meeting, the newly appointed chief prosecutor, Nico, demands that Rusty hand over his duties immediately. Rusty then learns that the long-delayed fingerprint report has suddenly arrived, clearly tampered with by someone in power. But that's not the worst part. His fingerprints are found in the victim's bedroom. Rusty insists they're from late-night work sessions at her place. Investigators dig into Carolyn's chat history and discover that Rusty was the person she contacted most frequently. "You and Carolyn were lovers, weren't you?" The question sends Rusty spiraling. He can't deny their affair, but he can't bring himself to admit it either. "My personal relationship with Carolyn has nothing to do with this case." His statement stuns everyone. Rusty bursts out, calling himself useless, only to be struck by an even more shocking revelation. The full pathology report reveals that Carolyn was pregnant at the time of her death. Did you know Carolyn was pregnant? No? Then do you know who the father is? The beautiful prosecutor's tragic death at home now points to Rusty as the prime suspect because of their affair and her secret pregnancy. To make matters worse, Tommy, his new superior, maliciously orders a DNA test to compare Rusty's sample with the unborn child. Get a court order. Raymond is equally furious. Rusty's hidden affair indirectly cost him his re-election as chief prosecutor. She was carrying your child, that's enough, stop. When the truth can no longer be buried, Rusty finally confesses everything to Barbara. Carolyn was pregnant, everyone thinks the baby's mine, they believe I killed her. Barbara is shaken, didn't he say the affair ended a year ago? She's stunned to learn they rekindled their affair just a week later. This time, even Barbara breaks, she silently gazes out the window at their children, making up her mind. Rusty knows his only way out is to solve the case. He reopens the old files, searching for any link between the two murders. But when he reviews the autopsy report, he's shocked to find that 2 different semen samples were discovered in Carolyn's body. At that time, the case had been handled by Rusty and Carolyn, yet he knew nothing about the 2 semen samples. Furious, he confronts the coroner, accusing him of leaving this detail out of the defense's report, which could mean the original suspect was innocent. But the coroner explains the second sample was contaminated and unusable for identification. Carolyn had known about it, and the coroner insists he followed procedure by including it in the original report. As deputy prosecutor, Rusty realizes this is a serious ethical breach, and he completely loses his composure. After cooling down, he calls a police officer he knows, Rigo, hoping to visit Liam, the old killer now in prison. Unfortunately, Rigo can only leave him a voice message. Just as Rusty starts piecing things together, the bomb inside his home finally explodes. During dinner, Barbara turns to their kids and says, "Your father has something to tell you." With no way out, Rusty confesses to his family, admitting he had an affair with his colleague, now the murder victim. The revelation shatters them all. This time, I'm not facing it alone. At that very moment, police cars line up outside. His colleague arrives with a search warrant in hand. The search drags on until dawn. Every corner of the house is torn apart, his daughter's laptop is seized, and Rusty's DNA is collected on the spot. Enraged, Rusty storms into the office to confront Tommy, accusing him of humiliating him in front of his family. Tommy coldly replies that it was standard procedure. Moments later, Rusty receives a suspension notice. When a man used to power is stripped of it, it feels like falling from heaven to hell. Even the therapist can no longer steady Rusty or Barbara's minds. I'm going to be arrested, they're checking my phone and computer, they'll find out how obsessed I was with her. If I were the prosecutor, I'd arrest myself too. Rusty begins his desperate self-rescue. He turns to Raymond, his retired colleague and the only lawyer he truly trusts, someone who knows the system inside out. But Raymond refuses to take the case. Undeterred, Rusty calls Rigo again, only to learn she's no longer allowed to investigate. When he mentions the second semen sample, Rigo can only tell him to find another way. Left with no options, Rusty visits Liam as a regular civilian. Liam instantly senses he's no longer a prosecutor. Rusty uses the second DNA sample as leverage, urging Liam to name an accomplice for a lighter sentence, maybe even freedom if Carolyn's murder is solved. But Liam sneers, "You really think confessing gets me out? You're desperate, Rusty." That path is closed, but Rusty remains convinced the identical bindings mean the 2 cases are connected. He starts reaching out to old friends, hoping someone can help him uncover the real killer. "That's why I need you, don't lie to me again." Few allies remain inside the police force, and time to prove his innocence is running out. Luckily, a glimmer of hope emerges. While talking with his wife, Raymond admits he still believes Rusty is innocent. After all, he's his closest friend. Moreover, fed up with a scheming rival who keeps holding press conferences to smear him, Raymond decides to take the fight to court, to help Rusty and get revenge on those who wronged them both. That night, Rusty is unexpectedly arrested at home. Watching the news, Raymond sees his political rival mocking Rusty on TV, and it only strengthens his resolve to defend him in court. The case soon grips the entire nation. As the trial begins, Rusty feels deeply moved seeing Raymond by his side, and his family present in the courtroom. As the hearing begins, Raymond firmly pleads not guilty to all charges. The prosecution requests a pretrial meeting, but Raymond immediately objects. He argues it's unnecessary and a waste of the court's time, as the accusations lack factual basis. He urges the judge to dismiss the case entirely. The judge rules that the defense will have 14 days to file motions and the prosecution 7 days to respond, reminding both sides that the case's gravity doesn't require media spectacle. After posting $1.5 million bail, Rusty is released and finally returns home to his family. He thanks his loved ones for their support and explains why Raymond opposed the pretrial meeting. "It's all about timing. The faster we move, the better it is for everyone." Just as the family starts to relax, Rusty receives a chilling text, "I saw you at the crime scene." Could Rusty still be hiding something? The situation grows more tangled by the minute. A photo surfaces showing Rusty near the murder scene. He frantically calls the sender, no answer. He texts again, demanding to know who it is, silence. When Barbara asks what's going on, Rusty hands her the phone, but can barely find words to explain. Because that night, he did sneak over to Carolyn's house. What happened next, only he knows. Barbara is speechless, even as Rusty insists he didn't kill her. The pain and betrayal are unbearable. The next morning, Rusty gets another text, an invitation to meet. The pressure becomes suffocating. Not just Rusty, Raymond too, his old friend and lawyer, is haunted by the weight of it all. Raymond dreams of Rusty brutally murdering Carolyn, a nightmare his wife insists might be prophetic. With public opinion turning hostile, Raymond fears Rusty will spend the rest of his life behind bars, and the thought torments him. Then Rusty shows up at Raymond's house with the mysterious message. Raymond warns it could be a trap or a journalist fishing for a story. Still, the undeniable fact remains, Rusty was indeed at Carolyn's house that night. Raymond learns that despite their breakup, Rusty had gone to Carolyn's to beg her back but was rejected. He advises Rusty to let the police handle it, maybe Rigo can help. Meanwhile, Rigo is summoned to the chief's office for visiting the prison without authorization. It's clear Tommy is eager to convict Rusty, ignoring the suspicious similarities between the two murders. Chief Prosecutor Nico brags about his connections, claiming he plays cards with the police union boss. Though Rigo is barred from the case, she secretly continues digging into the old one. Rusty decides not to involve Rigo further. He must meet this mysterious messenger himself. Raymond warns him to be careful, the person might be recording everything. Soon after, Rusty arrives at the abandoned factory where the meeting was set. To his shock, the mystery man turns out to be Carolyn's teenage son. "Why did you kill my mom?" "I didn't kill her." Facing the boy's accusation, Rusty admits he once loved the boy's mother and insists he's trying to find the real killer, just like him. But the boy laughs bitterly, revealing that he has photos and videos from that very night. To Rusty, this could be the key evidence to clear his name, proof that he wasn't the only one there that night. He pleads with the boy to hand the evidence to him or the police, but the boy coldly reveals he already gave it to Prosecutor Tommy and only wanted to meet Rusty to see the murderer's real face. The conversation is unsettling. Raymond becomes convinced the boy saw something, at the very least proof Rusty wasn't alone that night. As evidence exchanges begin, Raymond brings in a female lawyer named Maya to strengthen Rusty's defense team. The pretrial meeting, led by the judge, runs smoothly. Everyone there knows their craft. But Raymond, sharp as ever, notices something missing: the boy's photos and videos. Clearly, Tommy plans to hold them back as a surprise weapon in court. Pressed by the judge, Tommy claims the evidence is still being authenticated. "You'll submit that evidence today," the judge orders. The judge reminds Tommy that the trial is in 10 weeks and warns him not to withhold or manipulate evidence. "Play with fire, and you'll get burned." The good news, the defense is granted access to the crime scene. Before they leave, Maya suddenly asks Rusty, "Did you love her?" "Honestly, I'm not sure." That simple question stirs painful memories of his time with Carolyn. Back then, they'd worked together on a sexual assault case involving a fragile little girl. Carolyn had been endlessly patient and kind. She became the girl's companion, promising that during the reenactment, if the child raised her hand, she'd rush to her side to keep her safe. That moment of tenderness melted Rusty's heart, and that very feeling would one day destroy his life. That night, their team visited Carolyn's house to reconstruct a scene. Now, returning to that same place, Rusty can only picture her lifeless body. Every corner of the house bears traces of their past, DNA from their moments of passion, once lovers, now divided by life and death. Raymond interrupts his thoughts, aware that Rusty's been digging into the old strangulation case to trace the contaminated semen sample. Raymond knows that if they even hint at another suspect, they'll be responsible for identifying him. Rusty also knows what's coming. The prosecution will show horrifying photos of Carolyn's body, and the jury will need someone to blame. And if no one else fits, that someone will be him. Let it go? No. Meanwhile, Tommy keeps replaying an audio recording, apparently of Rusty and Carolyn the night she died. He's convinced he's found the key to breaking the case, rehearsing his courtroom assault for the perfect strike. That night, Raymond finally sends Rusty the photo and video evidence, showing him entering Carolyn's home and their intimate moments together. But as he continues watching, Rusty freezes. A figure rides past Carolyn's house, and to his horror, it's his own son. His son might be the killer of his lover. No one knows why Rusty's son was biking past the crime scene that night or how someone managed to photograph it. Rusty was already under heavy suspicion, and now his son's involvement only makes things worse. With his wife beside him, Rusty rushes to question their son. The answer leaves them both sighing. The boy overheard his parents arguing about the affair and wanted to see for himself why his father went to Carolyn's house. Enraged, Rusty starts interrogating his son like he's on the witness stand, forgetting this is home, not court. The boy refuses to talk further, except to his mother. Forced out of the room, Rusty wanders the streets, his mind replaying a mock trial from years ago, back when Carolyn was still alive. The case involved a 26-year-old victim tied up just like Carolyn, murdered in a filthy motel room. Carolyn's professionalism during the trial had deeply impressed Rusty. "You were amazing, Carolyn," he once told her. Now she's gone, and Rusty's life is unraveling. When he returns home, Barbara explains that their son only biked past Carolyn's house a few times and saw him enter once. That minor detail in the footage frustrates Raymond. Rusty lashes out at Barbara. They argue bitterly until Raymond cuts in sarcastically, "You can't play the saint after sleeping with the sinner." Just as things spiral, Rigo brings hopeful news. She's identified the source of the second semen sample. It belongs to a man named Brian, who had uploaded his DNA to a genealogy website. Aside from the match to a murdered sex worker's case, his record is spotless. Rusty and Rigo visit Brian's home, but he's unusually cautious, demanding to see Rigo's badge and staring at Rusty as if recognizing him. Trying to break through, Rusty approaches Brian's wife, a move that infuriates Brian, who throws them both out. Now, Rusty's only hope lies with other sex workers willing to testify and identify Brian. Soon after, Maya visits Rusty to discuss the case in detail. At last, the truth of that fateful night begins to surface. That night, Rusty stayed late preparing for Raymond's campaign, though in reality he was just texting in his office, while Carolyn deliberately avoided him. Depressed, he went to a bar. After a few drinks, a message from Carolyn appeared on his phone. In a photo later captured by Carolyn's son, Rusty arrived at her house at 9:49 p.m. His phone data shows he got home by 11 o'clock, minus travel time. That's 51 minutes unaccounted for. What happened during that time? Rusty confesses he went there hoping to reconcile, but Carolyn refused. They argued fiercely, ending with one final, bittersweet kiss. "But when I got home, I realized that hope had turned into cruelty." Their affair was doomed, and the prosecution will use those 51 minutes to argue he had time to kill, bind, and clean up the scene. Still, proving Rusty's guilt beyond doubt remains difficult. But Tommy isn't finished. He starts rehearsing the trial in advance, manipulating the coroner's testimony, crafting the perfect strike to leave Raymond defenseless. Later, Tommy adds a female colleague to the witness list, claiming the issue needs to be reported to HR. He also arranges meetings with Carolyn's ex-husband and son. Even though Carolyn's son left right after Rusty entered the house that night, he remains convinced Rusty is the killer, claiming he saw evil in his eyes. He also recalls that during dinner one night, Carolyn seemed anxious. She mentioned a coworker who scared her, someone she had worked a case with. That's why she couldn't get away from him. On the surface, all the evidence seems airtight, but Chief Prosecutor Nico starts doubting Tommy's conduct. A female coworker files a complaint calling Tommy a creep, but it's actually his setup. Everyone knows she once had a crush on Rusty, making her testimony look biased. Nico warns Tommy that they'll need ironclad proof, something Rusty's team can't dispute. Soon after, Tommy receives a secret forensic report. That night, Raymond calls for an emergency meeting with the prosecution. He breaks down the situation. Blood splattered everywhere in the victim's home, yet none found on Rusty or his car. The victim was bound meticulously, a clear sign of premeditation. Raymond argues that speculation alone can't win this case, not against a seasoned former prosecutor like Rusty. Which means there's a real chance the court could find Rusty not guilty. Still, Raymond knows he can't risk Rusty spending his life in prison, while Tommy refuses to lose his political leverage. So Raymond makes a compromise. Rusty will plead guilty to obstruction of justice in exchange for just 3 years in prison. But that seemingly safe plea deal collapses when Nico suddenly produces a new autopsy report. "Why am I seeing this just now? We only got it ourselves." Tommy smirks, while Raymond is stunned. The report shows Rusty's skin tissue was found under Carolyn's fingernails. Rusty snaps. Carolyn never scratched him that night. This is a setup, he's sure of it, orchestrated by Tommy and the coroner. Suddenly, pounding knocks echo through the house, followed by his daughter's terrified scream. While Raymond is still on the phone, chaos erupts at Rusty's home. Pulling back the curtain, Rusty sees Brian, the man linked to the second DNA sample, furious and demanding answers. Seeing his daughter terrified, Rusty loses control. He charges at Brian, unleashing all his pent-up rage. Rusty, Dad, stop, please, stop. It turns out Rusty has been secretly reinvestigating the old bondage murder case and discovered that Brian was the source of the contaminated DNA. Stranger still, Brian doesn't report the assault. Rusty senses something deeper is being hidden. Do you even realize what you've done? I just wanted to talk, okay. With no alibi to protect him, Rusty knows his only chance of freedom is to find the real killer. He remains convinced that Liam, the convict serving life, is still the prime suspect in Carolyn's murder. According to Rigo's investigation, Liam had bragged to fellow inmates that he once killed a prosecutor. Years ago, Carolyn hid the evidence of the second semen sample, leading to Liam's life sentence. It's possible he ordered someone on the outside to take revenge. However, former chief prosecutor Raymond dismisses it as typical prison bragging. Surprisingly, Brian doesn't deny having slept with the murdered sex worker. He claims his wife lost interest in him after childbirth, so he sought comfort elsewhere. Still, he insists he doesn't know Liam and refuses to testify in court. Rusty's last glimmer of hope fades away. As if things couldn't get worse, the next morning Rusty notices something odd: his son's bicycle tossed into the trash. When asked, the boy says the chain came loose, so he threw it away, but Rusty senses something isn't right. He loads the bike into his trunk and tells Raymond, who nearly loses his mind. With trial day approaching, suggesting that Rusty's own son, or Liam, is the killer would be suicide, the defense needs a believable alternative, not wild speculation. Raymond suggests that if Barbara truly believes Rusty is innocent, she should testify. Her faith in him could sway the jury. Rusty gazes off silently, realizing this may be their last resort. While the defense scrambles for hope, prosecutor Tommy exudes confidence. He thrives on cunning moves no one sees coming. He convinces the female colleague who once had a crush on Rusty to testify first, hoping to dig up hidden secrets. Tommy's motives aren't entirely professional. Years earlier, he'd asked to partner with Carolyn on a case, but she flatly refused, saying she'd rather work with Rusty, who outranked him. Humiliated and bitter, Tommy's been waiting for this chance to take Rusty down. Yet Chief Nico grows uneasy after hearing that Rusty's team is reinvestigating the old bondage murder case. Tommy brushes it off, calling it a dead end. He's got his own secret weapon. The next day, Tommy stands before the press, delivering a fiery speech as if he were justice incarnate. He denounces the corruption in the system: Wall Street criminals bankrupting the poor, drug companies profiting while cancer patients can't afford medicine. No one ever goes to prison for these crimes, he declares. The rich always find a way out, but as a prosecutor, I won't let that stand. His grandstanding leaves Nico speechless, but Tommy insists he's doing it to win the public's trust and the jury's respect before the trial begins. Finally, the trial day arrives. Rusty's family becomes the media's obsession. Cameras and reporters swarm outside the courthouse. Before walking in, Rusty gives his children a reassuring smile, while Nico anxiously watches the jury, the ones who will decide Rusty's fate. As soon as the judge opens the trial, Tommy wastes no time targeting the jury, presenting meticulously prepared evidence. Just as Raymond and Rusty predicted, he starts with a smiling photo of Carolyn, a brilliant, respected prosecutor. Once he's won the jury's sympathy, he abruptly switches slides, revealing a gruesome photo of Carolyn's murdered body. The effect is immediate. The courtroom falls silent as jurors recoil. Tommy drives the point home: Carolyn was a mother, and her death shattered a family. Standing tall on moral high ground, Tommy points directly at Rusty. If we can't uncover the truth, then what is justice worth? I beg you, be honest with yourselves. Rusty clenches his fists, furious, barely holding back from shouting in rage. The next day, the medical examiner takes the stand, confirming that Carolyn was struck on the head with a heavy object, then hit 3 more times with something smaller. Her skull fractured, intracranial pressure burst her brain, a horrifying death. Tommy employs his old tactic, having the coroner describe the gore in vivid detail to stir the jury, before delivering his killer blow. Rusty's skin tissue was found under Carolyn's nails. She was 6 weeks pregnant, and DNA confirms Rusty as the father. Every piece of evidence points against him. Fortunately, Raymond counters, the coroner didn't witness the killer. Medical theory alone can't convict a man of murder. Tommy shifts tactics, asking if the coroner ever met Rusty. As rehearsed, the questioning steers toward Rusty demanding to see Carolyn's body. He implies Rusty was terrified the coroner might uncover something incriminating. Raymond strikes back, calling it psychological nonsense. He adds that the coroner once insulted Rusty, calling him a bastard. The coroner explains that stress sometimes makes him lash out, but insists he holds no bias against prosecutors. Then Raymond throws a curveball: ever call Tommy Molto a bastard? Objection. Not more than you, I'm sure. Dr. Kumagai, maybe that's why he keeps getting re-elected. The courtroom bursts into laughter as the judge bangs his gavel, Kumagai fuming like a gun about to go off. The morning session ends. Nico scolds Tommy for overplaying it. Now their witness looks resentful and unstable. Tommy just grins, claiming it was intentional, a tactic to tarnish Rusty's image. This case has only circumstantial evidence, he says. We win by manipulating emotions and details. Kumagai's just step 1. Step 2, make Rusty lose control. Nico listens, half convinced. He still wonders why the original report never mentioned the skin sample under Carolyn's nails. Meanwhile, Raymond instructs Rusty to stay calm and neutral on the stand, no matter what. Outside, the press swarms them. Rusty and Barbara must appear united, because the jury will read every gesture, and in court, the better storyteller always wins. But Barbara refuses to treat the jury like fools. She says she'll simply act surprised when hearing her husband accused of murder. She'll just be herself on the stand. That afternoon, another forensic pathologist testifies, revealing a strange inconsistency. Rusty's saliva and trace DNA were found on Carolyn's blouse, yet none appeared on the ropes binding her, meaning the killer was careful cleaning the scene and hiding the weapon. Yet the pattern suggests a crime of passion, not a meticulously planned murder. Raymond seizes the moment, shifting the focus to a murder from years ago involving the same rope-tying method. Back then, Carolyn and Rusty were the prosecutors who put Liam behind bars. In court, Liam vowed revenge, so he could have had someone kill Carolyn and frame Rusty. The judge immediately calls both sides to the bench. Since reopening an old case requires solid proof, he won't allow speculative arguments. Give me a concrete reason to proceed, otherwise, don't waste the court's time. Raymond argues that microscopic skin cells can transfer through casual contact, even from a scratch or touch. He reminds the court that Rusty and Carolyn were lovers. DNA alone doesn't prove murder. Seeing his case weaken, Tommy calls a female HR colleague to the stand. She testifies that one evening she entered Rusty's office and found him and Carolyn in a compromising situation, the atmosphere awkward, so she left immediately. Another time, in the parking garage, she saw them arguing, Rusty hitting the car door, Carolyn speeding off. The witness says he was a man undone by obsession. Faced with the emotional attack, Raymond lets Maya handle it, and she turns the tables, uncovering a bombshell. The witness admits she never reported Rusty and Carolyn's affair to HR, but reveals that Carolyn had filed a complaint about someone else. Who? Tommy Molto. The courtroom erupts. The judge and jury freeze in disbelief. Tommy's image as the righteous prosecutor collapses instantly. Tommy tries to explain he never behaved inappropriately, but the witness clarifies Carolyn just didn't want to work with him because he made her uncomfortable. Nico shifts uncomfortably, while Raymond smirks, whispering, your protege's too green, he just shot himself in the foot. Still, Tommy's ploy partially works. It shows Rusty's emotional weakness. Barbara, watching from the gallery, is visibly shaken. Thank you. The next day, the judge convenes both sides. Carolyn's ex-husband has filed to keep their son off the witness stand. The judge uses the moment to propose a settlement. This is a second-degree murder at best. No matter how hard the prosecution tries, it won't be first-degree, but a full acquittal may go too far. A manslaughter verdict could be the reasonable compromise. Under this proposal, the state gets its conviction, and Rusty would walk free in 8 years. Both sides reject it. Rusty looks straight at the judge and says firmly, I won't accept any conviction. I'll accept only a full dismissal and an apology. Seeing neither side willing to compromise, the judge reluctantly allows Carolyn's son to take the stand. But what follows is a shocking turn of events, one that destroys the fragile advantage Rusty had fought so hard to gain. During the boy's testimony, both sides spar fiercely, objecting, redirecting, and countering each other nonstop. The judge repeatedly reminds the boy to answer only what's asked, not to elaborate. Then suddenly, Raymond staggers and collapses right there in the middle of the heated courtroom. The entire room freezes. Rusty rushes forward, panicked, trying desperately to help his fallen friend. The trial halts immediately. Raymond survives after emergency care, but what happens to Rusty's case now? Prosecutor Nico seizes the moment, filing to restart proceedings, arguing the jury has now seen Rusty perform a heroic act. During the judge's mediation attempt, Nico proposes a plan favoring the state. Maya immediately objects. Then, out of nowhere, Rusty files to represent himself. The courtroom erupts in protest, and the judge warns, the moment you express an opinion, the prosecution can call you as a witness. But Rusty insists, sarcastically calling his own defense lawyer an idiot, saying he'll handle the cross-examination himself properly, by the book. The judge relents. The trial resumes the next day, setting up a direct showdown between Rusty and Tommy. When Carolyn's son retakes the stand, Rusty presents their text messages, one reading, "You'll feel better when she's gone." The boy calmly explains, "I meant divorce hurts longer than death." Seeing the strategy crumble, Rusty changes tack, asking where the boy went after taking the photos. What follows stuns the courtroom. The boy admits he knew about his mother's affair with Rusty. He'd been collecting her old case files and researching the prior bondage murder. "Did you kill your mother?" Objection. "Then what about your father? Did he kill her?" Rusty admits he can't prove it, but argues that police and prosecutors ignored glaring inconsistencies. As Rusty presses further, the boy's father snaps, charging at him in fury before being restrained by officers. Rusty's daring move flips the media narrative. Headlines ask, was the victim's ex-husband involved? Why were so many leads ignored? Desperate to regain control, that night Nico authorizes Detective Rigo to testify the next day. When Rusty hears this, he explodes, demanding to know what Rigo plans to say. The detective, distraught, admits she doesn't want to testify, saying Carolyn was like poison to Rusty, destroying everything in his life. She adds that on the night of the murder, Carolyn had said she wanted to keep the baby. Hearing that, Rusty freezes, then furiously orders her out of the car. Has she just hit a nerve or fallen for Tommy's trap? The next day, when Rigo testifies, Nico plays a recording of Rusty visiting inmate Liam, using Liam's replies to imply Rusty tried to coax him into confessing to Carolyn's murder in exchange for a lighter sentence. Nico also accuses Rusty of asking Rigo to hand over evidence privately, keeping it from both him and Tommy. The testimony looks devastating, but Rusty turns the tables with just 3 sharp questions. "I said I was wrongfully accused, that's true, isn't it?" "Yes." "And I've always maintained my innocence in Carolyn's case." "That's correct." "Is it unusual for prosecutors to ask for confidentiality in active cases?" "Not in my experience." Rusty then explains he withheld evidence because he didn't trust Tommy and Nico to handle the case fairly, and the jury seems to agree. He glances smugly at them before returning to his seat, knowing he's just scored a major win. The prosecution, however, is on the ropes unless Tommy plays a desperate card. In the break room, Tommy stares at the wall of victories, photos of Rusty and Carolyn. He remembers that humiliating day when Carolyn politely rejected his celebratory hug. Rage long buried ignites. Tommy makes his move. He'll call Rusty to the stand. The judge calls both sides for a private conference. After a heated debate, he gives Rusty 2 options, a retrial or the witness stand. Maya urges him to accept a retrial, but after a brief pause, Rusty replies firmly, "I'll testify." Maya realizes this plays right into Tommy's hands, but Rusty insists he has a plan. Their argument explodes. Maya resigns in frustration. Now Rusty is defendant, defense attorney, and soon his own witness, walking a razor's edge between guilt and freedom. Barbara notices he's been taking cognitive enhancers, rehearsing arguments even in the shower. One slip up, and everything collapses. On the morning of the trial, Maya calls to remind him, "Stay calm, don't fall for Tommy's traps." Unexpectedly, Raymond, freshly discharged from the hospital, walks into court. Moments later, Maya returns. Rusty's confidence surges. Facing Tommy's relentless questioning, Rusty stays composed until Tommy plays a new card, their private message history. Rusty admits it was a moment of weakness, that he lost sight of what truly mattered, his family. "Impulses are demons," he says, "even Tommy's not immune. I'm not a violent man." At that moment, Brian, the man Rusty assaulted, rises. Tommy plays footage from a neighbor's security camera. Rusty argues he only lashed out because Brian trespassed illegally. He explains everything, the secrecy, the outbursts, the confrontation with the coroner, all driven by fear and a desperate need for truth. Yet one simple question from Tommy changes everything. "You grabbed his collar when you were angry. Did you mean to, or did you lose control? What would you have done? So you lost control, then?" This time, Tommy catches a flaw in Rusty's testimony. The prosecution quietly regains control, turning the entire trial around in an instant. His calculated move sparks a successful counterattack, the trial now rising and falling like a roller coaster. Well done. Rusty's fate now hangs by a thread. Memories flood back, his guilt, his obsession, and the love for Carolyn he could never let go. Though he chose his family, he remains haunted by regret. His downfall feels inevitable. Meanwhile, Tommy smiles triumphantly, certain the final victory is his. Yet the moment he steps into his house, he freezes. Someone has broken in, files scattered, papers everywhere. His cat is safe, but on the table lies an iron fireplace poker, scrawled with a note, "Go to hell." It's the murder weapon, but who put it there? Could the real killer still be out there, or is Tommy hiding something darker? When news of the poker breaks out, chaos ensues. Someone is either threatening or framing the prosecutor. Tommy accuses Rusty of planting it out of desperation, but there are no fingerprints, no DNA, even the building manager can't confirm it's from the crime scene. The judge suggests a retrial, but Nico refuses, claiming the jury already understands the case. Rusty suspects Carolyn's ex-husband, but Raymond warns him to stay quiet. Introducing the poker now would only backfire. The note screams setup, and the jury would inevitably question Rusty's innocence. Rusty stays silent in court. Later, he tells Barbara he recognizes the poker. The chipped handle is familiar. He once used it at Carolyn's house. But what terrifies him most, why are his fingerprints missing? The next day, Raymond calls their final witness. He reveals Carolyn ordered Chinese takeout at 8:27 p.m., yet her stomach was empty. This proves the coroner's estimate of 10 p.m. was wrong. Another expert argues the death likely occurred between 1 and 3 a.m., since digestion takes at least 4 hours. Tommy counters, saying there's no proof she ever ate the food, it could have been lunch or left untouched. After the final exchange, the courtroom remains divided. Raymond suggests Barbara testify that Rusty wasn't at the crime scene. Barbara agrees, but Maya fiercely objects, warning the prosecution would twist her words, dragging out painful family secrets. You know about the neighbor and the bartender at Clifton's. You spied on me. Sometimes we hire private investigators. To avoid new complications, Rusty decides not to submit further evidence. Reasonable doubt, that's his only lifeline now. Despite Raymond's objections, Rusty insists on delivering his own closing argument. He practices all night, coached by Raymond, encouraged by his daughter, determined not to slip. When he finally stands before the jury, Rusty begins with honesty. He betrayed the woman he loved most. He can never undo the pain he caused his wife, nor regain his children's respect. But in truth, there isn't a single piece of credible evidence proving Rusty killed his colleague Carolyn, because he didn't kill anyone. His affair while married was a moral failure, yes, but it was private. He only learned Carolyn was pregnant after her death. Yes, he was at her house that night, as he had been many nights before, and that's the full extent of the prosecution's so-called evidence. Rusty loved Carolyn deeply. Like anyone else, he wanted the real killer found, but Tommy ignored the truth for politics, framing an innocent man to protect his own career. Carolyn's ex-husband was never even investigated, despite having access to the earlier bondage murder files. Rusty had spent 15 years as a prosecutor, and never once filed a charge without solid proof. Yet now, he stands accused with no witnesses, no murder weapon, no reliable forensic link, not even a clear time of death. Everything is gaps and guesses. The prosecutors needed someone to blame, and tragically, Rusty fit the profile. From day one, Tommy's mission was to convict. His resentment and contempt have been on display from the start. But this case isn't about him, it's about you, the jury, the guardians of justice. You all swore an oath. You promised that above all else. To convict, you must be convinced, beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't deserve your respect. But ironically, I hope you do. Rusty's fierce closing words bring visible relief to Raymond, his heart finally unclenching. But Tommy isn't done. His rebuttal drips with confidence, shaking the jury's certainty once more. He accuses Rusty, the original lead prosecutor, of concealing evidence during the critical first 48 hours, of hiding his affair and obstructing the case. He claims Rusty bribed inmates, insulted the coroner, even assaulted a witness, behavior unbecoming of an innocent man. He reminds them, Carolyn's son saw Rusty at the scene, his prints, his DNA, everywhere, and yet he says, no evidence, a blatant lie. Then Tommy plays his old card again, projecting Carolyn's corpse on the screen. Rusty was the last person to see her alive. And now he blames a prisoner, an ex-husband, even a fellow prosecutor. That's not innocence, that's desperation. He lowers his voice, letting the silence stretch. Worse still, he accused the victim's son. What kind of man does that? Tommy spits, a monster. Why? Because he knows the killer is no one else. But right here, in this very room. Today, you still have a chance to serve justice. The weight of that duty rests with you. Look at this man. When both sides finish, the courtroom is dead silent. Everything now rests in the jury's hands. Rusty remembers waiting like this once, with Carolyn by his side. The longer the jury stayed out, the greater the hope. Meanwhile, Tommy still believes the fireplace poker is Rusty's safety net, a ticket for a retrial if things go south. But Nico turns to Tommy and finally asks the question he's held back for months. How much did you love Carolyn? Tommy doesn't answer. Their conversation is abruptly cut short. The verdict is in. Back in court, the judge takes the slip from the jury. The air is thick. Rusty's family holds their breath as he studies the judge's face. Finally, the clerk reads aloud. Charge of murder not guilty. Violation of Penal Code 609.195, dismissed. The courtroom erupts in cheers. Rusty is officially cleared. Yet Rusty doesn't smile, his face hardens, because this isn't relief, it's realization. Facing the press, Rusty declares justice was served, but the killer walks free. The one we owe most is Carolyn. That night, Rusty goes home and confides everything to Barbara. I never thought you could kill someone and still act so calm. You think I killed Carolyn. Rusty suspects his wife, or at least that she knows the truth. He recounts, that night, after leaving, he returned and found Carolyn lying in a pool of blood. He wanted to call for help, but she was gone, and the only person who could have done it was Barbara. To protect her, Rusty staged the scene to resemble the old bondage murder case. He believed a false confession from a convict would buy time. It had worked before. Barbara stares at him, horrified, as if seeing a stranger. But Rusty insists maybe she lost control, that her mind and body separated in panic. That's why I put a tracker on your car. I know it was you who left the fireplace poker at Tommy's house. Before Barbara can speak, a small voice breaks the silence. It was me. They turn, it's their daughter. She thought her father would be convicted, so she acted to save him. She drove to Tommy's house, slipped in through the back, and planted the poker as a threat. But that wasn't the most terrifying confession. She had also gone to Carolyn's that night only to beg her to stay away from her father. But when Carolyn revealed she was pregnant, I'll stay away from him, Carolyn said, but we'll always be connected because I'm pregnant. Hearing that, the girl snapped, grabbing the fireplace poker and striking Carolyn again and again. When Carolyn fell, she panicked, fleeing into the night. The next morning, she cleaned her car and buried the poker. Barbara is speechless. Rusty is broken. After a long silence, Rusty whispers, it was self-defense, you were protecting our family. This is all my fault. We'll stay together, no matter what happens. Barbara watches as Rusty holds their daughter close, terrified into silence. Darkness falls over the house. Justice has spoken, but the truth remains buried. And that concludes the story of Presumed Innocent. What did you think of this series? On a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate it? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.
You dismissed me.
Doing.
Same as you, crosshairs.
Well, don't worry, we're gonna